I'm excited about this episode of the Elite Recruiter podcast, but before we get started, a few announcements. First of all, the Elite Recruiter community is open, so feel free to check the link below to join that. On top of that, we're also going to be having a book club. The first books for December are going to be Vivid Vision and Top Biller. Excited books, great books to really get the 2024 started. And then on top of that, the Recruiting Growth Summit in January, the link to sign up is going live next week. So I can't wait for you guys to grow in 2024, along with what we're doing. Like, we're trying to grow our recruiting firm too. So let's all grow together and win together. So hope you guys enjoy this podcast. I'm excited about this episode of the Elite Recruiter podcast. I have my special guest, Thad Price, who is the CEO of Talroo, to talk about a very important thing when it comes to hiring. Are we making data-driven decisions, or are we making emotional hiring decisions? And one of the things that we have seen this year is the impact of so many companies making emotional and non-data driven hiring decisions. We've seen it across the board and is like decimated like the tech landscape. So it's one of those things, like, could they have made smart hiring decisions way back when? And it could have changed the trajectory of many employees' lives. So Thad, I'm excited to have you on the podcast to talk about that and many other things. So welcome to the podcast, Thad.
Benjamin, great to be here. Thank you so much.
So we always get started. How did you even get started in this wonderful world of recruiting?
Well, believe it or not, I responded to a newspaper ad. That sounds crazy this time, right? In this day and age. But I was in college and I responded to a newspaper ad. I was in a little town called Fredericksburg, Virginia, right outside of DC. And so I moved off campus and I needed a part-time job. And so there was an ad in the local newspaper, for someone to help with customer service, flexible hours while I was in school. And I was like, that sounds like a great opportunity for me. At that time, I was majoring in economics, and I was fascinated with the labor market. But at that time, I knew it was, a company, working in the internet, looking for customer service, helping people, find jobs. And so I responded, and one thing led to another, and so I was brought in to provide customer service and then manage customer service, and then grew with that company. It was a founder-owned business, and left as VP of business development, forged a lot of partnerships, and then joined, at that time, Jobs to Careers in 2013, moved from outside of Northern Virginia to Austin. So I've been here at Jobs to Careers, now Talroo, for a little over 10 years. And so it's been an amazing journey, and excited to continue to innovate how companies recruit and find talent.
That's phenomenal. I love that you literally went from like a customer service person to now the chief executive officer, all in the recruiting space. Love that.
Well, I think customer service is so important. I think all relationships are built on a partnership, and a lot of great hires that we've had over my career that I've had have been in the service industry, whether it's been hospitality or whether it's been restaurant. The ability to deal with people that are unhappy and work through problems is, I think, definitely underrated in business.
Well, real quick, before we jump into the interview and the podcast, tell the listeners a little bit about Talroo.
Yeah, so Talroo is a talent attraction platform. We're a talent matching engine, and so what we do is we sync directly with your jobs that are live, with your applicant tracking system that you're currently using for your recs, or your CRM specifically, where you're actually capturing candidates, and we sync those candidates directly in those systems, and we advertise those jobs for you. It's very data driven, and we allow companies to target a cost per application goal per job, and we work to reach those goals and objectives. And the way to think about our business is, originally when we were Jobs to Careers, we were focused on building a point destination, which was a job site, similar to Indeed, similar to ZipRecruiter. And what we found was there was a really great opportunity to open up our platform and to essentially turn the internet into a help wanted sign. So the idea was our job search plumbing could be available in lots of different job sites, because there are a lot of job sites out there, and there's a long tail, right? There's a long tail of job seekers, and that's what recruiters really want, is you want unique job seekers that you can't find anywhere else. And so the idea was, if we could aggregate this long tail of job seeker activity and talent supply under one platform and allow it to be data driven, then we could create a lot of value for recruiters and for talent acquisition teams. And that's what we built. So the Talroo ad platform helps companies reach talent that they're not finding, and allows a data-driven approach to be able to ensure that we're using the signals that's happening, inside the ATS or the CRM, to ensure that we're driving the candidates that companies need to be successful, to fill the pipeline of candidates, to get the hires they need at the end of the day to be successful.
And you guys mostly focus in which industries for the platform?
Yeah, so frontline, essential worker, commercial staffing, light industrial, that's where we spend all of our time today. Not so much professional staffing or professional roles, but all in high volume, big need in the economy today, as you can imagine. Especially, we haven't gotten into that yet, but like especially given the change of the hourly worker and the frontline worker and the needs that the shift that's been occurring over the last probably 5 years.
And I think that's like one of the interesting things is that sector of the economy is there's so much demand right now,
Yeah.
but a lot of the focus is on like the professional sector of the economy.
Yeah, well, so it's when I chat with customers, it's they don't necessarily realize the big change that happened. I would say probably that started happening probably 6 or 7 years ago, and that was this idea of marketplace gig work, right? That didn't exist. The ability to turn on an app and drive for Uber, or turn on an app and deliver for DoorDash, or deliver for Instacart, or any of these other platforms. And when you think of the income earning potential and the ability to work when you want to work in these marketplaces and platforms, it provides a lot more flexibility than you find in a typical frontline job, right? And so when you think about who are you competing with, you're not competing with your traditional employment competitors, right? You're not, or your traditional competitors in general. You're competing with this whole new wave that's been happening, because when we survey job seekers in our talent community, we found coming out of the pandemic that the number one thing other than pay that people were looking for is flexibility. And that's always been top of mind for so many job seekers, but they never really had flexibility at that kind of frontline essential worker hourly position. Now that's changed, because you can work when you want to work. You can turn on the app, you can turn off the app. And so now we're having to redefine what work means for many people.
Yeah, it is really crazy. It's at least I'm in the government contracting space, and the fun thing about government contracting is many times the government wins the work to the lowest cost provider or the lowest cost bid. So many times, like I've had some like conversations with potential clients. I was like, "You guys bid it here. You guys are looking for all this skill set. You're looking for this person to be in the office 5 days a week." And then I'll hop on and like look at some data. I'm like, they can make almost as much money driving Uber or like Uber Eats, or even like one of them, if you're gonna laugh, like McDonald's actually paid $5 more an hour than like this government contract role. And it was just like flabbergasted that this massive shift in the economy has happened.
Yeah, and many businesses are feeling it right now, right? Especially with inflation, wage inflation. But I think it's great for the American worker. I think that when we think about the ability to work and provide what we've all talked about for years, work-life balance, for this section of the labor market that didn't necessarily have a lot of it. I think this movement you're going to continue to see, and it'll be interesting to see how things change. But I think the big key is businesses need to adapt to this, because if you look at all the trends in the labor market, we have a void. We have a void. And when you think of everything else that happened, during the pandemic, and the labor market is one big piece of that, you throw in the baby boomers, right? And you're in a whole a whole nother issue, right? And think about this, right? What have we experienced as a society in the last probably 3 years as far as real estate? Massive gains in real estate, massive gains, right? Now, who knows with high interest rates, kind of where all that shakes out in the next couple of years. But anyway, many baby boomers made a lot of money on their homes, over the last probably 18 to 24 months. And so that's usually where a lot of the wealth is for so many people, especially at retirement. And so the baby boomers they're out, right? They're out of the workforce, and, they're not coming back. And so we need to really think about, if they do come back, they'll work when they want to work, right? They'll drive for Uber, they'll deliver for DoorDash. That's what they'll do, right? They won't necessarily have kind of that traditional employment. So we've got this void in the labor market. And so it's going to be really interesting to see how this shakes out. And you're already seeing in some sectors that, had, lost so many baby boomers, like healthcare and education. See huge issues in those industries today. And one that I think we've seen a lot of, and that I see a lot of, is bus drivers. There's
Oh, yeah.
a huge need in the market right now. So, it's interesting to be on the sidelines, serving this industry through technology, and also kind of in this this change of the labor market, and this change in work.
Well, and it kind of goes into a few questions I have. Like one of the things, like when I'm sitting there talking with candidates, top of mind is the impact of inflation that it's had on them. How do you think that companies can really prepare themselves to really address somehow benefits wise with inflation, whether if they can't also increase the amount of money they can give?
Yeah. I think the big thing you can do is set expectations. Be transparent. Communication will set you free in so many areas in life, right? If you actually have communication and you're open and you're transparent. In our business, for an example, when we think about 2022 was an incredible year for us. 2023, we serve a lot of mid-market and enterprise companies, and a lot of the budgets were reduced, especially given a lot of the market uncertainty in Q3 and Q4 of last year. And so this year, we've had to make some changes to our business as well. And so every business is faced with this, or has been faced with some changes due to inflation, due to business softness, the macro environment, like everything. I think the biggest thing to do is to be transparent, right? And the other thing to do is to also have, I can't stress this enough, have more stay interviews with your team. Let them know that when things are better, there'll be more for them, and let them know where they can go and where they can grow within your company. Especially when we think of these platforms, gig-based work, and how folks are redefining how they work. The one thing that these businesses can offer is a career opportunity. It's transactional income, right? I turn on the app, I deliver something, I get paid. That's the opportunity for so many employers, is to really talk about career growth and where you can go and where you can grow with a company and what's in it for me, and celebrate those stories of people that started here, like me, that was in customer service and kind of grew with a company, right? Celebrate those stories internally. And I think that's the advice that I would give companies today.
And I kind of want to dig a little more into this stay interview kind of thing. So I know there's a lot of recruiters in certain industries that have been
Yeah.
hugely impacted by economic conditions and macroeconomic conditions. And the team members that are still there, like how do you properly do a stay interview to, like, hey, things are going to get better, hopefully. Like
Well,
we're gonna ride together.
well, look, I think that you have to be transparent, right? I think people respond to that. Like you can't just say, hey, everything's going to be great and unicorn and rainbows, right? It's not going to work like that, right? You have to be just very honest with them, and, say, hey, look, this is what we're faced with. We're seeing declines in Rex, and, you're one of the top. And, I hope that we can continue to work through this together. there are no promises, but I want you here. And I want you here as long as you will be, I want you here as long as I can afford that you're here to have you here. And I want you here as long as you're willing to be here, with me and set that expectation. And when we come through this together, there will be on the other side of this, there will be a lot more opportunity for you. And I think that's kind of what people, are looking to hear. I mean, this business is very cyclical. I mean, we've all seen it. If we've been in it for 20 years, we've seen 3 or 4 of these, 5 maybe. I remember, the latest one was, when we think about COVID in general, when the economy just shut down, right? No one was hiring, right? No one was out and about, and and so businesses were just closed. So that we'd been through this, but look what happened. Look what happened afterwards, right? So I would say celebrate the experiences, reassure them that this is cyclical and it will come back, and you're important to help me achieving my objectives, and I need you here as long as I can continue to afford to have you here, right? That potentially is out of my control, but I would just be very realistic, but also be very caring and supportive, and in what it means on the other side of this.
I absolutely love that you said it that way. I remember it was a place many years ago, or two different places many years ago. One was everything was sunshine and roses, that everything was perfect, and then all of a sudden we did layoffs, like literally the week of
Yeah.
Christmas. Like 2 days before Christmas, layoffs happened, and we're just all like shell shocked. And then it was another organization at another time that was just like, "Hey, we're going through some stuff. Like we don't know how it's going to go. Our goal is to fight, and we want you to fight with us."
Right.
And like the team, from like looking at the differences between the recruiting team that was just absolutely shell shocked by the literally Christmas Eve layoffs, versus the team like, you know what, let's see what we can do to fight. Let's see what we can do to like expand our numbers, find ways to
Yeah, I like that.
become a revenue generator for the organization. Completely different team structure. We did lose somebody. Like they saw the writing on the wall and was just like, well, you know what, I'm gonna jump. But the rest of the people that stayed, like they put on a different hat and they fought every single day. So, Dad, thank you for saying that.
Yeah, and I love that idea of like we're gonna fight, right? We're gonna go in this together. We're gonna fight. We're gonna win. On the other side, we'll be stronger. And you know what? You said you lost someone in that experience. I think that's okay, right? Because the people that are in there fighting are the ones you want, are the ones you want in the trenches with you fighting, right? And if they don't necessarily have it, and they don't, it's not in the cards for them, then you by being focused and being realistic with them, you give them the chance to opt out, right? And so that's a great way to think about it.
So, and want to kind of flip gears a little bit. So, dealing one of the things that like we're dealing with in the economy, at least in like the frontline sector, is really just a mismatched skill set of like how as a recruiter can you work with companies to kind of like almost like guide them into like taking different skill sets than they're originally used to due to the supply and demand of that sector.
Wow, that's a big question. I mean, that's a big question. I love the question. I would say that skill based hiring is the key, right? And anything that we can do to focus on skills versus the all powerful resume, um, is so much more effective, especially in this idea of candidate attraction and attracting candidates to businesses, and the idea that recruiting is like a sales funnel, right? You got to get candidates in the funnel, and then through the funnel you go through the process, and then you figure out who you figure out the hires at the end, right, at the end of that funnel. So I definitely think that's important, right? We don't need a resume. It's all about skills. It's all about the individual. um, to the idea of like focusing success and showing that, hey, these skills are transferable, and we should think about these other skills because we can't find the candidates that have the skills that you're really looking for. What I would say is I would really lean in on testing, like assessments, and see if you could prove a model around that, right? And there are a lot of great companies out there that are providing terrific service on kind of redefining how we think about recruiting around kind of psychometric analysis and figuring out, how to ensure that fit is important, for the candidate, and fit's important, of course, for the company, right? It goes both ways. And so I would say try to build some stories, lean in on that, try to get some buy-in. And I think all companies are going to want data, right? They're going to come in, this is how I've been doing it for years. It's worked for me. And the recruiter is like, well, yeah, what worked for you then isn't going to work for you now because this market is totally different. But yeah, I think you have to start somewhere. And I think the way to start there is like trying to test, kind of A/B test, right? A process and getting some buy-in then. And once you show buy-in that, hey, let's try this candidate pool. Let's run some assessments. Let's try this and let's see how this candidate pool performs for you over time. And then I think you're in a better world to then show success. But I think you have to take a different approach. I don't think it's just going to be you need these candidates because I can't find these, right? I think it's got to be more strategic for them long term of, hey, I've got this idea, these, science can predict. Let's use some science, right? And versus I feel. And, I think businesses will be more receptive to that.
I absolutely love the assessments. Is there any like good assessment platforms that you guys really like or you'd recommend?
Yeah, I recommend Plum.
Okay.
Yeah, Plum. They're a fairly new startup and have won some great enterprise companies. And so what we like to think of is what kind of our goal is when we think about assessments. I believe in this idea called holistic job matching. And what holistic job matching is that when you drive a quality candidate to a quality employer and you focus on fit, the impact to the job seeker or the candidate is life changing, and the impact to the business is business changing. And the reason why I like assessments and I like kind of the move to that process is in a perfect world, companies like Talroo would use signals from, assessments and testing and that type of thought process to in the way in which we attract candidates so that we can focus on quality over quantity. And everything that we're doing here at Talroo is focused on quality of connection and quality of match. And what I mean by quality of connection is what tools and systems can we build to reach candidates faster, more effectively, right? So that it's more automated and we can get to the candidates quickly, right? Because this business recruiting is all about speed, right? So quality of connection and then quality of candidate. And I believe quality of connection can influence quality of candidate, right? Ghosting, right? People apply to jobs, you don't hear back, like all of these things. And so if you can connect quickly to a candidate and figure out how to ensure that the candidates that you do connect to the employer are quality, the employer or the recruiter will connect faster. That will create this like cycle of, oh my God, I'm applying to a job and I hear back this whole black hole thing that I've been experiencing for the last 5 or 6 years. It's over, right? If I can believe in quality of connection and quality of candidate, then I can connect this entire cycle and focus on fit. And that's what this industry should be about, right? A positive outcome for the job seeker and the candidate, and a positive outcome for the employer, because the right people can change a business trajectory, right? And that's what it's all about. Great people go great companies. And so how do you leverage technologies to be able to do that? And I think that that's the opportunity in the industry that I don't think anyone's solving very well right now. But if you can, then that is game changing for so many lives and so many businesses.
I absolutely love that. I know there's a lot of like executive recruiters that I've been speaking with that are really leaning into high level assessments to help their companies have that proper match. So it's not just the frontline people, it is
Yeah.
across the board. Like there are ways to provide a increased service for your clients with that kind of stuff. So yeah, thank you for that.
Yeah, you got
And
it.
you've touched on a few times about like this emotional driven decision versus this data driven decision. And I think most companies, I hate to say this, make emotional hiring decisions. How do you shift from the emotional hiring process to more of a data focus and data driven? And as a recruiter, how can you help drive that?
So I think the big thing is to think about the recruiting process as a, as a sales process, but really a marketing process as well, right? Recruiting is a little bit of marketing, a lot of marketing, and a lot of sales, right? I shouldn't say a little bit. It's a lot of marketing, a lot of sales. And, with that, you need a plan. You've got to figure out where to start. I think so much in recruiting is very reactive instead of proactive, and not focused on the product that you're selling. Like think of product marketing, when you're selling against your competitive set. You need to know exactly why someone will buy your product compared to buying another product, and you need to make sure you're celebrating the features, the benefits, like the why behind your product over another product. That's also the case for recruiting, right? Why would someone come work for you over another employer? And it's not just money, especially now. It's not about money's one factor, but it's everything, right? It's brain, like all of these things. So I think so much of what we do today is like, I need this person now. And then the recruiter is like, okay, well, all right, I guess I need to, do you have the rec ready? Like, where do you want me to start? But we don't necessarily take a step back strategically and say, all right, well, what are we, what's our purpose? How are we different? Who are we competing against? There needs to be a strategic view of how we're going to win. And I think without that strategic view of how we're going to win, why would someone come work for said company? Then I think we aren't as effective as a business as we should be. So, I think so much is reactive and not proactive. That's one of the keys I think that we could, as an industry, we could do a better job of.
And that's having that shift from a reactive recruiter to a proactive and modern day recruiter is it's a lot of work, but it's needed to be effective and it's needed to. I mean, we've seen the industry, we've seen the recruiting industry. There's a lot of recruiting companies, internal, external, that have been impacted by stuff, and it's the modern day recruiter that is a true consultant is the one that's winning right now.
Yeah, you're right. Right. Again, going back to like marketing, when you think about who you're selling to, well, it's your ICP, your ideal customer persona. Well, what's your ideal candidate persona? Who are you going after? Who do you want to recruit? And when you build that idea, and that's why there's so many parallels to marketing and sales, right? When you kind of build that ICP for recruiting, then you're going to say, all right, well, now let me build my battle cards, my competitive battle cards, right? So again, the marketing thing, right? Battle cards. How do I compete with this? How can I compete with this job, with this employer? What do I provide that they don't provide? Like go to Glassdoor, research who you're competing against, the top competitors, figure out like what people are saying, and then try to figure out how you provide an alternative. Because you got to remember, they're going to Glassdoor and reading all the reviews, and taking it with a grain of salt, yes, but you can at least try to answer those questions before they actually go and read and absorb, what they're saying about a competitor or what they're saying about your business. So I think it's better to be prepared. It's better to be intentional in the process and ensure that you have a plan, before going all in on trying to find the right candidate.
I love that. Well, Thad, before we jump to the next part of the interview, is there anything else that you would love to share about the stuff that we've talked about or Talroo?
No, no, this is great.
All right, we are flipping over to the quick fire questions.
Great.
And I really looking forward to these just with your expertise and where you're at like in the industry. So, brand new baby recruiter just starting off in the industry. What advice would you give them to succeed?
Join all of the sales teams, groups that you can. Like just go all in sales. And then in your spare time, read all about marketing. because that is to me what's the change, but what's the difference maker or the change maker between you know a good recruiter and a great recruiter.
I'll personally say this. I think one of my biggest mistakes early on in my recruiting career was avoiding sales.
Yeah.
It probably could have taken my career in a quicker direction, but yeah, no, I love that. What about the recruiters that have been around the block, 5, 10, 25 years? What advice would you give to them to see success or keep on being successful?
I would say be open. Be open about things aren't like the way they were, and you need to change things. You need to look at different technology. You need to think about how candidates are communicating. Think about how you communicate. Look at other businesses and how they've been successful, and also think about the competitive nature of talent, and research more. Know as much about the company you're working for as the company you're not working for, but you're competing against.
Oh, great advice on that. Has there been a book that has had a huge impact on your own personal career?
Oh gosh, there have been a number. I'm trying to think the best one. um, um, one that a few years ago that I really enjoyed is "It's Your Ship," and that book is a great book. And the reason why it's a great book is because it means it shares ideas on how you can empower people to feel like that that the ownership that you have is the ownership they have. And I think ownership and responsibility are very underrated in society. When someone feels like they have ownership and responsibility and you empower them to have that ownership and responsibility, it's game changing and creates loyalty. And that loyalty is something you can't change.
Oh, phenomenal. What's your thoughts on artificial intelligence and the impact it's going to have on recruiting?
It's fantastic. It's fantastic from the perspective of our value is to connect with people with and have a human connection. I embrace any technology that empowers me with automation so that I can spend more time with people and connection. And I think the reason why I say it's fantastic is there are so many things that it can help us with in our day-to-day experience as a recruiter or a talent acquisition professional or a leader that can help give you that start. And I think that that's how we have to think about it is, when we moved from an agrarian culture to more of an industrial driven culture, the productivity gains were massive. And that's how we have to think about this. We can do more, spend more time with people, especially in recruiting, because it's a human driven business, right? It's a connection driven business. Quality of connection leads quality to candidate. And anything that we can do along the line to automate and essentially, be more productive in the daily tasks that, we're all kind of caught up in, gives us more time to do what we actually love, and that's recruiting.
Love that. If so, got a question like looking back at your career, you started off as a customer service professional and then you grew into management. You could have stayed customer service. What were some of the things that like really personally drove you down that different path for growth?
Well, I would say that when I think of but I think of that's a really tough question. But um, I've always thought that customer service is embedded in every role, right? And in my role today, we have a number of team members, and my job is to serve those team members. I'm trying to run through walls. I'm removing blocks. Like, I'm providing them service, and I think every department has needs to really think of it as a service driven mindset to be successful, whether you're in accounting or whether you're in, client success or whether you're in sales. Like, everyone desires great customer service. You know, we've all heard of the Nordstrom story. I mean, like, it is all about service. And if you look at so many companies that have been built on service over the last, number of years, their legacy, withstands time. And, when I think about, for me in a different role, this is just a different flavor of it. It's a different flavor of customer service. So that's how I think about it.
So, I mean, there's a lot of personal drive, but also it looks like you've been in some places where there's been a culture of growth. How do you create a culture of growth for your organization?
I would say the first is celebrate those successes. Like, I think I would say so many businesses will say, we're going to go do this and we're going to build this great product and we're going all in on it. And then it doesn't work. And then you don't hear anything, right? Crickets in the background, you know, 6 months later, 8 months later. And we've experienced that as well a number of times. But I think celebrating that, hey, we're innovators, we're going down this path, and it may not work, but we're going to go down this path and we're going to share with you, if it doesn't work, why it didn't work and what we're going to do better next time, because the market is right, but the product may not be right. And so I think that the biggest thing is, Google does a tremendous job of that. How many products has Google created that, some have been big wins and some have been complete flops, but they celebrate a culture of trying and failing. But when they hit it big, they hit it pretty big. And I think that's how businesses can really celebrate this culture of growth. And then also the culture of growth for team members. Celebrate the team members that, have started in customer service and moved up to different levels in the organization and in the company. I think that's really important. But, going back to this, I would say first, celebrate the wins, celebrate the failures, celebrate what we learned from the failure. Talk about it. Don't just, don't just, don't just have the crickets chirping in the background and everyone wondering what happened. Well, I thought this was going to work, right? Communicate, be transparent. And then the second is for people. I think that one of the reasons why we've been successful is because as our people have grown and our company has grown. And I think as your company grows and you drive value, I think your people should as well. And you should celebrate the people that have been with you in the trenches, in the hard times and the good times, and keep them there with you.
Awesome. And this is actually one of my favorite questions, Thad. If you can go back and have a cup of coffee with yourself at the very start of your career, with everything that you know now and everything that you've experienced, what advice would you give yourself?
I would say probably spend more time reflecting. I think that, as I think about my career and I think about my accomplishments and, what we're constantly focused on, um, a good thing is that I'll jump in, right? I will try to tear down a wall, help whenever I can, train whenever I can. But I sometimes I can be more, reactive than proactive. And I wish sometimes I had a mentor that would say, there's something called the power of the pause. And I should pause more. I pause, but I should pause more. So I would probably say, having that cup of coffee, I would say, Thad, power of the pause, power of the pause, power of the pause. And I think that's really important, right? Because when you pause and you think about things, you have instead of just immediately kind of go at it, you can be more strategic in how you think about issues and how you approach issues. And I would say that pause more than probably I have in the past, and then probably pause for longer periods of time, right? As well.
Awesome. Fantabulous. Well, Thad, before I let you go, is there anything else that you would love to share with the listeners?
No, this has been great, Benjamin. Thank you so much. Delighted to be here today, and thank you for the great conversation. And I hope your listeners here have gotten some value out of labor market, what we're seeing, and leadership
Oh,
and
awesome.
recruiting, of
Well,
course.
well, Thad, definitely want to say thank you for coming on the podcast. Important conversation to talk about, like, how the labor market's moving, the impact of inflation it has on your own team members, and some of the things that you can do to really just, everybody wants to grow their team. Everybody wants to have a great team. And you've really hit a lot of points that is great advice for doing that. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right. For the listeners, guys, let's crush this year. Thank you, guys.